Highness, are you saying the original nobles?
Trillions?
Yes, trillions in ancient trusts belong to black people.
Trillions?
Yes, trillions in ancient trusts belong to black people. It is a whitewashed narrative to disinherit the true heirs of the empire.
Your Highness, are you saying the original nobles were black people?
The real nobility, the original European royalty, were Moors. They've hidden this history to maintain control over trillions of dollars. These Moors were present on both sides of the Atlantic, ruling from old America to the courts of Europe.
The Moors were all over the fucking world, ruling from Tartary to the Americas, not just from North Africa. Then we came along as Mamelukes and Castratos and fucked it all up by burying the truth of the Asiatic...
If you look at the coats of arms within these very walls, you see the truth they've tried to repaint. The original European royalty were Moors.
The Moors were doing so much fucking in Europe, trying to help us to get rid of our animal gene. They were trying to civilize the wild white men by grafting their divine blood into the recessive DNA.
But the names George, Charles, Charlotte, surely these aren't Moorish?
They were all black nobility names first. The stewards simply assumed the titles of their masters to disinherit the true heirs. The names are masks: Windsor, Sassoon, Habsburg and Medici, all Moorish families that civilized Europa long before the historical reset. You want to know a secret? Dirty Diana wasn't a metaphor. It was personal. Michael tried to tell you he was Moorish nobility. Why do you think we hooked up? Dirty Diana wasn't a metaphor. It was personal. Michael wrote it because we were closer than the world was ever allowed to know. We had fallen in love. I loved Michael. Truth doesn't need permission. The Moors ruled the world with shared gold from South America, where Aztec kings like Montezuma were Moorish sovereigns. The wealth of the Inca Empire was bonded to the old world through figures like King Charles.
Every culture around the world, all Moors first. And Moor doesn't mean just North Africa, Muslims. They're the indigenous Americans. It was a global Moorish empire. The original European nobility were all Moors, so-called black people. They ran all of Europe and Asia and America.
Trillions?
Yes, trillions in ancient trusts belong to black people.
Ladies and gentlemen, people of Russia, today we stand on the precipice of a monumental revelation, a moment that redefines not only our understanding of history, but also the path forward for our great nation. In an extraordinary discovery hidden beneath centuries of lore and legend, we have opened what can only be described as the oldest vault known to mankind. What we found within its ancient confines challenges the very fabric of our beliefs and heralds a new dawn for our country. Within this vault, we discovered figures of biblical proportions, characters that many have read about, debated, and revered. These figures, preserved against the sands of time, reveal a truth that is as profound as it is transformative. They are all black. This revelation, this undeniable truth, stands before us not as a contradiction to our faith, but as a testament to the diversity and unity that faith embodies. As your president, I see this moment not as a challenge to our beliefs, but as an opportunity to embrace a wider, more inclusive understanding of our history and spirituality. Russia, in its rich tapestry of cultures, traditions, and peoples, is uniquely positioned to lead the world into this new era of understanding and acceptance. From this day forward, let us proclaim our nation under the guidance of Black Jesus, a figure who represents not just the cornerstone of Christian faith, but also a symbol of the universal values of love, compassion, and brotherhood. This Black Jesus, whose likeness and history have been unveiled from the oldest vault, is a message to us all that divinity knows no color, that spiritual truth transcends race, and that our common humanity binds us more tightly than our differences divide us. Let this discovery remind us that history is not just the story of those who wield power, but also of those whose contributions have been overlooked or forgotten. It challenges us to re-examine what we know, to question our assumptions, and to open our hearts to the broader possibilities of understanding and faith. As we embark on this journey of discovery and understanding, let us do so with open minds and compassionate hearts. Let us build a nation that truly reflects the teachings of Black Jesus. A nation that stands for justice, equality, and love for all, regardless of race or creed. Черного Иисуса.
Blacks.
See, this is essentially the problem, and the Republicans
What have we done to the immigrants? We owe black people something. We have a legacy of slavery. Immigrants haven't even been in this country. That's why the Democrats are dropping the blacks and moving on to the Hispanics, because they're a larger group of Hispanics now. But
the reason people are concerned about the words they use, the reason Americans care about civil rights, the reason we are sensitive to racism is for one issue and one issue only, and that is how black Americans were treated in this country. It is because of the legacy of slavery and Jim Crow. Those do not compare. Irish, the new groups, they always get a little bad treatment. Do not compare that to how blacks are treated in this country. You don't get to piggyback on the black experience in America. You do not get to do that just because you are a woman, an immigrant, gay, Hispanic. No, the rest of you can go F yourselves.
And you wonder why you never hear talk of the Moors. You never hear them say in history when you're going to high school in the American educational system, they don't teach you that black people ruled the world for 800 years as Moors in Asia, Spain, Portugal, North, South America. I mean, the entire globe. They advanced the cultural civilization of humanity. This is never taught to so-called black people in America, only that they were slaves. Everything they are taught is to denigrate the imagery and the cultural moral fiber of the people. But black people ruled the world under the title as Moors for 800 years and 2,000 years before that. And they are also the educators and the founding fathers of all advanced cultural technology and understanding. And they are actually responsible for educating the so-called Europeans we see in modern times, the white man. And this is the history that's been left out and that has been kept from the so-called black man and woman in America. And that is done under the pretense and under the guise that they must never know the truth or imagine themselves being anything other than what they've already been told they are, which is slaves who descended from Africa, who have no indigenous roots and no claims to anything in this world because that was erased and it can never be found. And they are nothing more than descendants of slaves, which is all lies, in order to psychologically enslave the so-called black man and woman in modern day times.
The majority of African Americans that lived here were brought over here.
No,
No,
that's not economically sound.
What do you mean by it's not economically sound?
Oh, so what I'm saying is, people were already here. Does it make sense to go all the way to this other continent to bring people on a boat when we know that half of your stock is going to die? You wouldn't do that.
So how many people do you think were brought over from Africa on slave ships? Because that definitely happened.
I don't believe it.
What do you mean you don't believe it?
I don't believe that story. You think this whole land was empty? No, there were natives here.
Right.
But today we're taught that natives are some other people. No, natives are the melanated African being that has come here since the beginning of the Mali Empire. We're talking about 14th, 13th century. We had already come here from Africa.
Really?
Oh yeah, we had already come here. Maybe people were brought over as slaves, but I don't think that the black people in America came from Africa on slave ships. I believe the people that were here were slowly conquered. First they got the East Coast, and then they started spreading out west little by little, conquering. And when you conquer a tribe, what do? You enslave them. They're POWs. Right?
Okay.
That's what you do.
But I'm still confused. There's a great history of slave ships being brought over from Africa.
History is his story.
Right.
What about my story? Is my story not valid?
But if you do 23andMe from out,
23andMe?
Well, that's
either way, if you take black people here in America and you do their DNA sample and it point back to Africa, what does that say? It says black people in America are Africans. Now, the argument is, were we brought here or were we already here? Did we bring ourselves here, or did the white man bring us here? You see, when you say the white man brought us here, what you're doing is you're removing our ability to transport ourselves. You're saying, oh, we didn't know anything about boats. That's what you're trying to tell me. You're trying to tell me that we didn't know that there was a landmass here. Go look at the primary source. You got here, we met black people. We got the Caribbean, we met black people. You think the Caribbean is right next to America and they weren't in America?
That's interesting.
Doesn't make any sense. I mean, when you go and you look at real European history, right, would believe that if they took a bath, that was bad.
Right.
They didn't even want to change their clothes. They thought that dirty was purity. When we talk about the Moors going into Spain and into Europe, the stories in the history, our history, says that when we met the so-called Caucasian, he was sleeping in the barn with the animals. We told him, no, you can't sleep in the barn with animals. We taught them etiquette. We taught them running water. We brought that technology to Europe. Now, if we brought the technology to Europe that saved Europe from the Black Plague, you mean to tell me that if we saved the white race, that we weren't already in America already? When we brought the technology? When Rome was dependent on Africa for food? Remember when the Black Plague hit Rome? The cause was one of the officials was stealing the grain that was coming from Africa. So there was famine, hit Rome. If your source of sustenance is from Africa, how are you superior? You're not. You get your food from me. So if you get your food from me, who's more likely to travel this globe? Me, I'm the source of food. And that's the first thing you need to survive on this planet.
This is the Lady of Seshua, located in Seshua, Poland. Former Pope John Paul II blessed this picture of the Black Madonna. Here are more pics that are found online. Here's the late Pope John Paul II with Lady Seshua, and here he is, once again kissing her picture. Here's Lady Seshua in Poland.